Hello and welcome to episode number 115 of Killer POV. I'm one of your hosts, Rob G, formerly of FEARnet. Mm-hmm. Just like Rebekah McKendry here is formerly of Fangoria.
I am.
That's right. I'm actually sad to say this. And Elric Kane, formerly the owner of the Jumpcut Cafe, which sadly is no longer with us.
Well, I'm still the owner of Jumpcut Cafe, but Jumpcut Cafe is no longer there. In fact, it got demolished today. The inside of the building got completely demolished.
So what's going there?
It's a sushi thing. I don't know.
Really, I think we should all just show up and be like, we don't care what it is. I'm sorry, the horror community hangs out here. You deal with it. I want a hot chicken sandwich.
Yeah, it's been a long weekend. Well, I'm still too fresh, I think. It's all a little fresh. It's been something I've been dealing with for about a year, knowing that it was coming. So I wasn't surprised like everyone else. That was a big surprise, I think, because when a deal was inked for us to basically pass on the last 2 years of our lease, which is what you have to do if you're trying to get out. You can sell your business or get out, you know. Yeah. Finally, it was like you had 3 days to do it. And so, I had a lot of hard things I had to do in this last weekend, telling staff, but ultimately it was a positive thing for me in the sense that, it's going to be good to save my life. But sad, I think I held it together all weekend until I drove away in the truck, after saying goodbye to the three guys who really are the lifeblood, in my opinion, besides the cook, Mara, Charlie, John Humphreys, and Kyle Kutcha. They were, to me, this last year, the only reason this place survived that last year is because of them, because I was largely unable to fulfill a lot of things I was doing before for financial reasons and multiple reasons. And, they just were really three of the best humans I've ever met. Yeah. And I mean, when we were locking up, I was just looking at them going, I can't believe these like 23-year-olds, 25-year-olds were... I don't know. They're just like good. Like Kyle, I look at Kyle. I don't know if there's a nicer human on earth. We're kind of giving him shit. Like his bike was stolen last week, and someone's like, I guess it's my fault. I mean, I hope that guy enjoys the bike. I know Kyle listens to the show, so I can make fun. But no, they're really,
that is so sweet, though.
And ultimately, that's all it is. I mean, I know we're going to talk about it more later, but ultimately, all it really is. And we took a photo at the end of this empty shell, and I'm like, it's a kind of a piece of shit building. The floor is shit. All it was a spirit imbued in a place from an idea I had that I could never have made happen on my own. So it took. So you build it, they will come kind of thing. You don't know they're going to come. So you build the idea, and then it took Bekah and Ryan doing Dead Right Horror. It took Mike doing Secret 16. It took me doing the short film nights, and then it took the library. And all those things combined are what became Jumpcut. Yeah. So every time I'd see a post with my name on it, I felt... because there was just this, incredible outpouring, which I wasn't totally expecting. I knew people would be sad. I didn't know they were going to thankfully they put that positive spin, which made it easier on me, because I think I felt for the last year, I think I had a real guilt. And I was resisting letting go for longer than I probably should have for personal things. And, at a certain point, they made it actually very easy for me to let go by reading all that. That's seeing the love. It could have been a lot more... fuck that guy. He was never there. It's like, well, there's always a reason why I'm not there. It's a funny thing about letting go of a small business. I'll tell you this much is, if you meet any other person who's ever had a small business and you tell them that, they don't even flinch. They just go, yep, it's impossible. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I went into a cafe with one of our friends, Matthew Carr Holmes, on one of those bad days where things were going bad with you're just like, shit, I don't know if we can continue. And I went to some really nice cafe up in like Sherman Oaks, and we went in, and I said to the lady behind the counter, Matt said, he has a cafe, and she just looked at me in the eye and she goes, it's not easy, is it? And I said, no, because it's, just, we'll talk about it more when we, next episode, you're saying we're going to go in depth, but it's, America now is not really set up for that. And I stayed away from the negatives all weekend purposely, because I had to let go of something that I really cared about, a lot of people cared about. So I said to myself, when I write this post, which is the second hardest thing I've ever had to do, telling my employees was the hardest, but then writing a post where you kind of, there's a part of you that's full of rage at a system that's kind of impossible. Like the only person who gets rich off this business, the landlord. Because if I have a terrible, December is terrible because everyone leaves LA. January is terrible, everyone's out of LA. The landlord still gets the exact same amount of money. The taxes still get paid. So there's just these little, basic setups, and minimum wage is going to go up to $15 eventually, which is, as the socialist liberal I am, is like awesome. As the business owner, how can I double the income come. And so there's just, and it is a warning to people out there, because the one thing I'd really stress, I wouldn't change a single thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the amazing thing, to be able to say that, to be honest. I really wouldn't. If I was, actually, I would change one thing, and it's a way I think it could have survived if I had done it at the start. It's not a liquor license like a lot of people thought, which I think would help. It's actually, I would have integrated other businesses into my business. I would have had a bookstore, like a small bookstore. I would have had maybe a small video store, and like had them all paying a little bit of the rent under that roof. Right. And then just found a way to make the space work, because I feel like maybe the future, if there's going to be a future for physical places, which it terrifies me that there would be no more jump cuts left, or coffee shops or places if it's just Starbucks. But I feel like if you could mix enough of those, it really probably, if enough people are paying the rent and there's little cool niches, that would be awesome. I remember when Bob Murawski's painting of Master Mafia was on, and I saw him, and he came to pick up the picture this weekend.
We were hoping he wouldn't.
Well, I was hoping he wouldn't.
He showed up on the last day.
I was praying Bob would forget, but he is such a great guy, and he did come, and I said,
he hung out for a while.
I said, it would be so cool if I had been selling, like if we were the storefront for Grindhouse Releasing, so you knew you could buy these physically only at Jumpcut. Yeah. There's so many ideas you have like that the problem with a small business, you get so tired of the day-to-day BS that it kind of kills the dreamer in you a little bit. So I looked at photos of me about, pardon me, in the first year when I'm putting on short events, and I see that gleam and the flicker of what was Jumpcut for me. And then in the last year, I remember going to certain events or even trivia where I'd just be, your mind could only see it like, oh, I hope we hit 1,000. If we don't hit that, we can't pay this, we can't pay that. And once you're there, it's really not who I am. I didn't think I was really cut out to be a producer or a shopkeeper. In a lot of ways, I think I'm meant to be the person who kind of dreams big and throws his hat in the ring and goes for it. And if I get shot down doing that, it's on my own volition, not the oppression of taxes. So, I am a ridiculously optimistic cat, and I just, even when you're in that worst moment saying goodbye and closing the doors, I'm still like, man, the spirit of this is like pretty amazing, and I wonder what we could use that for. How do we keep going? And so I'm also touched by a lot of you listeners who have never been here, and I found that to be one of the most surprising things, how many posts or emails or texts I got saying, man, that was the one thing about LA I wanted to do, which is if you came here, you would laugh because it's a shoebox. It was
a small place, but the spirit. Every time we went to Dallas, the Texas Frightmare, there were so many people there that are used to the Alamo Draft House and this and that. Like, oh my God, I keep hearing about all the screenings at Jumpcut. I can't wait to go. And I want to be like, you do know how small it is, right? I mean, it's great, but it's
just
not
this little screen and a little projector.
But I love that it had that rep.
It just had this energy. And I mean, I know we're going to talk more about it next week, but even like I had taken my mom there every single time she came into town.
I took my parents there, man. First time in LA.
When I got a big parking ticket to Rob's dad.
As soon as I told my mom that it was closing, she was like, well, where am I going to go to see everybody now? Like, she was genuinely
No, and I'll tell you, that's the part.
It.
When I drove away, I think I hadn't really caught on to the fact, because I knew by getting out, it was going to make my, life possible and family and everything was, and also, I moved to LA to make films, and I kept telling myself, I can still do this while doing, and you can't. Yeah. I shopped 342 times in 3 years, like big shops. I mean, grocery shops where you're in there for an hour pushing huge carts of things. I'm like, I'd never gone shopping before that. Like, I was not a Grogu, you know what I mean? And so you have to balance your dreams. Selena. Are you living your dream or someone else's dream? And I think at a certain point, I was kind of like facilitating a dream that wasn't really mine anymore. The Jumpcut idea was still, but not the restaurant. I'm not a restaurateur. Somebody out there, that's their dream, and they'll have a better chance to pull that off. So, but it wasn't until I drove away that I went, oh, that's what it is. It's knowing that no matter what, you could go there almost any time, and there was a very good chance you'd see someone you knew or liked or could strike a conversation or I'd say like a freak like you in that best possible way.
It totally was, because that was the appeal of working there, is I could go in and I could set up at a table early in the morning, and throughout the day I would see Emma, and then somebody else would walk in, and if nobody walked in, I'd talk with Kyle and John, and it was just like, it was the place where everybody knew your name.
The people we hired, by the end, we went through quite a bit of staff early on when we took over, because they weren't really film people, but the group we ended that last year and a half, zero turnover, by the the way, in the last year and a half of business, which is as a employer, which people forget I was like someone's boss, which I never acted. You can ask them. I never really act like a boss, but there's something really that you take some pride in that, because when we didn't have arguments, we didn't, it's kind of uncanny. And that was because of the place, they wanted to be around, and people treated them well. And I will say this because I'm not, we meet a lot of celebrities, and I definitely don't feel like I'm some sort of starfucker. But I got to say, one third to last day when I walk in after the announcement, the first person I see sitting there is Mick Garris, who gives me a super warm, was really sorry to hear. Then I checked my email, and there was an email from Tom Holland with something very personal and written. Then I go on Facebook, and Jeffrey Combs has said, I loved when I met you there and had the sandwich. And it was so genuine from these people who don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And I am a kid who, like all of you listening, who grew up watching Jeff and Reanimator going, oh my God, this is the greatest movie ever, greatest performance ever. And then the guy's having a sandwich with you. And I will say this, and segueing into, if we're not going to, the last sandwich we sold was the Craven. And that's an absolutely true story. And that was 2 hours before we heard what happened to Wes. And it was to John Gallagher. I went for, we ran out the last day. What people don't know about you going out of business or restaurant, the goal is to get rid of everything.
Right, all the food.
And so literally,
I bought the last hot chicken. She they saved it for me because I texted him and I was like, I'm coming and I want the chicken.
Yeah. Well, the Craven is tuna, right?
So literally all we had left was tuna and grilled cheese.
I came in and it's like, we got cheese, we got bacon, we got tuna. I was like, well, I don't like tuna, so just give me cheese and bacon.
And I kept saying, and we have chicken juice, because there's all the juice from the chicken. And you can have chicken juice with anything. But
you can't touch my chicken because the chicken was mine.
But no, and it was one of those things that I heard off the corner of my ear. I hear John going, I guess I'll have the Craven then, if that's all that's left. And literally we're packing up, we're cleaning, and Kyle comes from around the corner. We're locking up the doors. We've just cleaned out everything out of Jumpcut. And he goes, oh my God, guys, Wes Craven just died. And I was just like, oh, and the reason we don't have a Kubrick sandwich, Kubrick being the bigger director, is because he was probably going to be that sandwich when I was making the board, was because I thought to myself, well, the only director who actually ate his sandwich here and loved it was Wes Craven. Was there one day eating the tuna melt and loved it. And so I thought, I'm going to name it after the guy who actually ate a sandwich. And then to hearing that, obviously it's a much bigger loss than Jumpcut in that sense, but it's, it was just interesting. Cosmic.
No, it was weird. I mean, the whole weekend was very emotional.
It was.
Again, I think we're going to try to next week. We're going to try to do a tribute both to Jumpcut and Wes Craven.
Look at all the cool
things. Much more things to talk about. But with Wes, it's funny. It's like I just hate that we're at the age where we're losing these people that meant something to us while we were growing up. Because seeing it, I didn't believe it at first, and I'm like, shit, that actually hurts. It hurts that filmmaker's not with us, because I really thought about it. I'm like, I think that's the first director whose name I knew. When I was 10 and my cousins forced me to watch Nightmare on Elm Street, which essentially opened up this whole world to me.
It's very similar to how I
be
started,
a horror fan. I think that was the first movie where I was like, well, I need to know everything about this. Like, who thought this up? Mm-hmm. So when I really stopped to think about it, I think Wes Craven is the first horror director whose name I knew.
Yeah,
and and it's very bittersweet. I have met him on occasion, but it was like at a Fangoria Weekend of Horrors for like 10 seconds, and he signed a thing for me. But he was one of those filmmakers that meant a lot to me as a kid growing up, and for whatever reason, every opportunity I had to interview him or whatever never panned out.
Well, including on this show where one of our friends who may or may not come on, we don't know yet, but who will have made Wes's last film, which is called The Girl in the Photographs. It's in Toronto Midnight. He was his mentor, and he just would tell me such great things about him, and it really changed Nick's life. And it's a similar thing. He grew up, and you never would have thought you would have landed in that boat, But you got that time at the end with somebody who has just such incredible experiences, And the thing I just like, I don't know, I was reflecting a lot on what we did, and the only thing that popped in my head, and I tweeted, and it's funny, I've had more response from that than I've ever had in anything I tweeted, because I think it crystallized something that I hadn't seen anyone write about him yet, which is find me another director in any genre who 3 decades in a row completely redefined a genre. Mm-hmm. And I said, it was the nihilism of the 70s. Yeah. It was the fantastic features of the 80s, and then it was the self-referential 90s. I mean, you could say, oh, well, Last House and Texas Chainsaw, but when it comes to Scream, like literally defines, and Nightmare's the pinnacle film. So it's like no one could have that kind of run. And after I wrote it, I started thinking, oh, why not the fourth decade? Why not in this period? And I honestly believe it's because maybe he didn't want, maybe subconsciously, to be part of the torture porn period, but that thing that was happening there, maybe he couldn't be part of, who knows? Yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting, but it's hard to believe. We'll go more in depth, film by film, but it's pretty fan. And the one thing I will say that pissed me off, I just can't take this kind of brainless criticism. I was looking at a lot of the posts and I'd see some things going like, oh, well, those last few films are real crap. So whatever. Here's the thing, guys, just so you know, look up any filmmaker and you look at their last couple films and find me 5 master filmmakers who their last few films were any good at all, let alone watchable, because for the most part, it's a perfect crystallized period in a creative's existence where they make their best work. From Dario to Carpenter to anyone you can name, Peck and Pop.
Yeah, but that's such a terrible argument. Like, I didn't want to get into the negative thing, but it's like the amount of people I deleted over. Because it's like, you're going to critique, his last few films sucked. And I was like, yeah, but he created Freddy Krueger. Like, Pass for Life. Like,
what's that? You're only as good as your last movie, kid. It's like, no, that's actually wrong. It's almost impossible to make a good movie, let alone a great one, let alone 4 or 5 great ones. So at that point,
there's books written on why that occurs. Like, it's a cycle where this director creates and flourishes. Like, he'll come up during a particular time period and create something that's landmark. And then he's somehow able to flourish during this extra time period. And then people kind of adhere him to that, though he's ready to move on. And then that's what happens for the rest of his career.
And Wes falls into that more than any. I mean, because I think a lot of directors...
Hitchcock does too, where people were still pushing him to make, quote, Hitchcock films well past the prime of what those films were.
Your average filmmaker, like a Dario or someone, is getting worse maybe from repetition of doing the same thing when it doesn't work anymore. Someone like Wes, I think, was always at a certain point trying to make something different and music from the heart or pushing into a different territory. But that means his failings were because he really wanted to do something different rather than because he was failing the same way. And I have a lot of respect for it. It's the sign to me of a really healthy, active mind. And I think he was that. I mean, that probably in a nutshell is who he was.
Yeah. Totally.
So we'll definitely talk more about that, and we can remember some of the good things, the good times.
What else did you guys watch this weekend?
I forgot about that.
That's why we're here, darling.
That's right.
I've got 2 quick ones for you. Well, let me start with the negative first. I watched Contracted Phase 2, and which, by the way, is out today on VOD and limited theatrical. Okay. So if you like the first one, then you should definitely check this one out. I did not like the first one, and I do not like the second one either.
Symmetry for you?
Yes, I'm very sorry to the filmmakers. These movies are just not for me. And there's a lot of reasons I didn't like it. Actually, I think it's distracting that it picks up from the last movie and then just takes a 180 and just it's like there's no connection. Even though I don't like the first one, I'm almost angry that it doesn't adhere to the first one's rules. You know what I mean? Like in the first one, I actually kind of like that there's this weird guy in the background out of focus that it looks like he has sex with a dead girl and then he has sex with this other girl. And it's just as simple as that. Like he's transmitting something from that. And then they try to like explain everything and give it a lot more meaning by the second one, and it's like Morgan's great, but it's like he's got this whole master plan to be the end of whatever. So I had a lot of problems with it, and my problem with both movies, quite frankly, and this is just me, is it's in the writing, quite frankly. And again, I'm sorry to the writer of the first one. I'm sorry to the writer of the second one. But
are they different? Do you know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course, because Eric would have written the first
one. And Craig Wallendaziak, sorry if I said your name wrong, who I know listens, and I'm sorry, but wrote the second one. The thing is, I feel like they're just like first drafts. Like it's an idea. Like both movies felt stretched out to me so beyond belief that there's not much to it. And it's like, please take more time to flesh out this idea. And it was only confirmed last week when they're like, well, we had a start date, but we didn't have a script ready yet. It's like, really?
Yeah, and I definitely felt that on the second, but I enjoyed the second.
Don't make movies that way. Just finish the script, work on it, you know, and then make it.
I see the script limitations for sure. For whatever reason, I just thought it was a fun pace to it. He moved the story along.
There's
Josh had a style about his work.
Yeah, and there's fun things in it. And again, I like Morgan's performance is kind of crazy. I actually rather enjoyed a lot of the cameos in it, like what's his name? Benson and Moorhead.
I don't know, guys.
They were in there?
Oh yeah, it's a giant wink. Gosh.
They have a quick little cameo. There's a few cameos in that vein, like that. Jeffrey Reddick was like a school teacher.
That's
and I thought
right.
that was
He
cool.
was
really good.
Yeah,
but I mean, and that's what I mean. There's logic issues when it comes to some of the writing, because it's like, so Jeffrey Reddick is teaching a class and the girl's in there and the guy just like comes out and takes her out of class. And nobody says anything. It's like, you just pull the girl out of the class. The teacher's not going to say anything, whatever. And then another kid comes out of class like, hey, man, what do you do with this girl? And it's just like, all right, they're in a school, right? Like, why is nobody reacting the way that normal people would react in this situation?
It's because Jeff Reddick is the teacher.
Exactly. He just didn't give a damn, I guess. So, yeah, I unfortunately did not like that. But again, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. If you like the first one, check out the second and tell me what you think. I'm curious. The second movie I want to see, I wanted to talk about, I'm actually really excited to talk about. Graham Skipper, Herbert West to some, and Reanimated the musical. He came over for a movie night, and he had a stack of movies that we were going to choose from, and he said, there was one he pointed and he's like, Stuart Gordon likes this movie, and he told me I should check it out. And I looked at it, and it had weird artwork, and it was crazy, and it was called Plaga Zombie, Zona Mutante, Revolucion Toxica.
Wow.
All right, 3 titles, but it's technically a Plaga Zombie movie. And I was like, I never heard of this, but it looks kind of Dead Alive-ish. This looks fun, whatever.
From what kind of period?
It's Spanish. It's in Argentina. It's like, that's the big thing. It's an Argentinian horror movie.
Yeah.
So we pop this thing in, and it looks like it's kind of shot on video, and it's a little crazy and weird looking. But, and also we immediately discovered that there's no subtitles. So we're like, I can kind of translate, I guess. It's like, fuck it, let's see what this movie's about. So we start watching it, and the thing that we both got into, it was really fun. It was kind of a almost like a Peter Jackson Dead Alive meets kind of that Shaun of the Dead vibe. Like, it's just really crazy and weird. I mean, right off the bat, there's like an opening sequence with zombies, but the zombies are like all weird colors. Like, they're like bright blue, and then one's like kind of green or whatever. So like, it's so exaggerated, like almost like street trash colors. And then in the second scene, it's like the 3 main characters are running away from a spaceship. So, like, the gimmick is that, like, aliens actually inhabit the bodies of the dead. So at points they, like, split open or whatever.
That's
and then
kind of fun, though.
So there's, like, all this, like weird stuff.
Are the effects good?
They're pretty cool for what it... I mean, it's got that low-budget, bad taste, Dead Alive feel to it. And maybe not as good, but it's kind of fun. And at one point, one of them splits open, but he looks like a Terminator alien. so there was, like, so much...
Okay, this sounds really badass, Rob.
No, there's so much crazy shit happening that me and Graham just couldn't believe it. It was like, who needs subtitles? We got this, you know? And there's even one of the 3 characters befriends a zombie that he names Junior and essentially treats him like a dog. You know, it's like his Fido, best friend. Yeah, it's kind of like Fido. So there's so much crazy shit that happens in this movie. And we just couldn't believe our eyes. We're like, who the hell? Because that's what I love is that, you watch something. I always love watching foreign movies from a different country because, this is a super low budget thing made in Argentina. But you watch it and me and Graham were like, these dudes, they're our people. Like, there are people from Argentina we get it, right. But it's so different from our perspective because of where they live culturally that you're like, oh, I kind of get this. It's kind of neat.
I wonder how Stuart Gordon found it.
He saw it at a film festival because it actually, I don't know. And here's the funny thing: halfway through, like, who the hell made this? So I go on my phone and check IMDb, and I'm like, all right, Plaga Zombie. I was like, wait, it says 97. This movie, no, it says 2012 on the box. And he's like, no, it can't be 97. I was like, oh no, wait, that's the first one. There's a part 2 called Plaga Zombie Zona Mutante from 2001. And I'm like, but wait, this says 2012. We were watching the third in a series.
Oh my gosh.
It's actually the third movie. We're like,
weird.
Holy shit. And Fango actually put out the first 2 movies I think the first one's only 45, like an hour long or something. And then they sort of made a sequel that was feature length. And, at one point, some version of Fangoria Video put it out.
Did we release them as Plague of Zombies?
Plaga Zombie. And I do remember it in the early 2000s. I think maybe even Tony Timpone might have been able to cover it because once I heard Argentina, it was famous. Like, oh, the first zombie movie from Argentina. And I was like, oh, I vaguely remember this. I didn't know that they've made 3 of them at this point. Was it good? I don't know, but I had fun. And literally, I had to make note of this. And Graham said he couldn't wait till I talked about it on the show. At exactly 1 hour and 10 minutes into the movie, for no rhyme or reason, there's a musical number.
Oh, wow.
Like the 3 main characters, yes, and it's like the Plaga Zombie song, and all the zombies get in on it. So it's like a 3 or 4 minute sequence, and I'm like,
that's
what
wacky.
the fuck just happened?
Wow.
Yeah.
What a weird movie. But yeah, I guess I kind of dig it. And I don't know if that last one came out officially, but I looked on Amazon, and it seems there's a lot of used copies of the first 2, which I'm totally going to buy because they're like $5 on Amazon or whatever. So yeah,
Let
I
us
don't know.
know
It's weird.
how they
I liked
are.
it. What did you guys see?
Well, that's just some TV.
Yeah, I saw. Well, mine are quick. So I watched a lot of Wes Craven films this week, but I'm going to save those for next week when we talk about.
Here's a
Wes
quick
Craven
question
tribute.
for next week because we have a little bit of time. Were there any when you heard of his passing? I had to think about it. Which of his films you have never seen? Because there's, and I don't mean maybe the obscure TV. There's a couple that are really hard to get.
Yeah,
but like I just realized like last night, I was like, I don't think I've ever seen his Hills Have Eyes too. Like even though I've heard about the dog,
I haven't seen that since I was.
I think I'm going to try to watch that one. I
Yeah.
don't think I ever saw Music from the Heart. I don't think I saw
that.
I think there's at least another. We saw all the ones from that classic Shocker, Serpent in the Rain, that kind of period. Everyone's seen everything.
Yeah,
but
I'm pretty sure I've seen all of them.
I haven't seen Red Eye even. I mean, I've seen it, but I haven't seen it since like it first debuted, like long ago.
What's the one that Kundi shot for? And it was a TV movie, or there's one because when
the Chiller movie.
No, you didn't do that one. It's something I hadn't even heard, like Summer of Blood or something. There's one of these.
Oh yeah.
Because that when Nick was putting his film together, we're like, didn't Kundi and West have never worked together? And then it's like, nope, they actually have.
Yeah. The TV stuff is the only stuff I'm not familiar with.
Chiller I have seen, and that's really good.
I highly recommend, and Joe can talk about this a little bit more, checking out his porns. And as weird as that sounds, I know it sounds weird.
Bekah.
I kid you not, if you watch a couple of them, and Joe can direct you to the specific scenes, because I was like, just tell me where to go, like the exact scene, so I'm not like watching an hour waiting for a specific segment. There are segments in a lot of them that you look at and you go, oh my God, that exact same setup's in Nightmare. That exact same thing. I can see exactly where this came from now.
That's interesting.
So yeah, there's some, and Joe can talk a little bit more about it, but it's just like watching the evolution of a filmmaker where you see it in that kind of porn setting and then you just go, oh my God, that's a Nightmare.
Right.
So it's
and it wasn't as taboo
crazy
to be directing that right at that point.
No, that's where you started directing.
Things were changing.
I mean, like Bill
Stallone's in one,
Lustig did
right?
it, and I mean that's just how you started doing film at the time. So it wasn't that taboo. But the two things. So I watched a lot of Wes Craven. I kept going with Salem, and I have to say, I completely agree. The second season is like completely amazing. I've been watching the Bronx Warrior trilogy, which is not hard.
The Bronx Warriors. The first one's called 1990 Bronx Warriors.
Oh, the releases from Blue Underground.
Yeah.
They look cool. I saw the covers. I haven't watched them.
So I've been kind of working my way through those. They're not horror in any way, but they're total exploitation.
Yeah, cult films.
They're very much like the Italian answer to like Escape from New York, but they're
and the Warriors and like all that. It's a weird amalgamation of that stuff.
There was a whole bunch of these kind of like urban warrior movies that came out around that same time, like Tenement, and there was just definitely a chunk of them. But I mean, they're very amusing, and it's very much in that same like Italian movie, Italian actors speaking English, but not well enough, so we dub it later. And I mean, they have some charm to them. And then the last one I watched isn't exactly horror either, but I'm going to mention it because it's written by Dario Argento. So a couple days ago in the mail, Rob and I got a big box of stuff from Arrow Video.
Yeah.
And I just love pretty much everything Arrow's putting out right now. And Rob and I were like, what do you want? And I was like, Western and French sex. And I don't even know what I came home with. And I don't know what exactly.
I think you gave me all the Japanese stuff, which is no surprise.
You took the Japanese stuff. I took a Western called Cemetery Without Crosses. And I took this one called Le Grand Bouffe or something like that.
Grand Buffet?
I have
maybe.
I haven't watched it.
It's a French film called Le Grand Buffet. It's a big orgy.
A big orgy.
It's a really good film. Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
No, it's really. It's like a very famous art house.
I was just
orgy.
like, okay, French sex and Western. That's me. Rob gets the Japanese stuff. And so I watched Cemetery Without Crosses last night, which is Elric. You need to watch it because
sounds cool.
this
sounds like Django something. Yeah.
Okay, it's not an Italian Western. It is a French Western. So it's made by a French director, and it has this French sensibility where people just walk into the room and stare at each other and grimace for 30 seconds and then might say something, and then the camera will hold on the scenes for way too long.
And Argento wrote it?
And Argento is listed as the co-writer.
Wow.
And I mean, and it's still, I can understand why Arrow put it out. It's very, I can see it being controversial. It's got rapes in it. It's a lot more brutal than most of the Westerns.
They put one out
I'm
called Day of
accustomed to.
Anger with Lee Van Cleef that I just saw as part of these new Beverly screenings, and it was really, really good. Like, and that's just it was one of those ones where you're like, wow, what a crazy story. And so it's interesting what they're doing.
I will say Cemetery Without Crosses is not the Western for everybody. Like, I would not sit down and watch this with my dad, and he's like a giant Western buff, because it's not action packed. It's more like a French film. Right. And even at the end, I was like, is it just ending? Like, there was nothing there. It just was kind of like, and we're done. Director out. And so, it functions more like a French film, but it's really fascinating to see how a French director approaches an Italian spaghetti Western.
Yeah, I recently, for the first time, saw like a German one from that same time period. And I was like, weird. It is so different than what you're used to, because the Italians were really drawn from the Americans. So there was really still strong, I think, their work. But yeah, once you go to these other countries, it's like really strange when you see them.
And the weirdest thing, in all the scenes, all of the characters in the Western, I kid you not, they're eating baguettes and soup. And so it's just like they're hanging out at the saloon and everyone has a baguette and a cup of soup. And it's just like, this is just wild.
Yeah, that is pretty wacky.
So that's all I watched this week. And a ton of Wes Craven I'll get to next week.
Yeah, I'll rock through some TV quickly. I saw the second episode of the Walking Dead spin-off show, which the first one I kind of, I think I defended it, and because I liked the setup of the characters, but I was like, information-wise, it's all stuff we've seen before. Second episode, man, I want to say I liked it. The second episode did everything that the haters of Walking Dead claim about the normal show, which I don't agree with, because I really like it. All the things that they probably would hate about it, this was like on the nose, beat for beat. I mean, it was like, oh, there's a racial riot over here, and everyone's saying the generic thing, and kind of the fear you'd have of making like the pre-28 Days Later. You know, it's all the things we already know. We already know because we've seen Romero films. We already know. And so it was a real problem for me. It was like, I would go on, I'd say it was a really, really bad episode of television. I still really like Cliff Curtis, and all I could think about while I was watching, and I am somebody who's always optimistic, so I actually think, oh, there's only 6 of them. I bet by the last one, it's going to be really cool. Right. But all I could think about afterwards, I was like, what would be cool is if like you just do this, everyone dies except Cliff Curtis, and this is just a one-off season, and then he enters. So it's like a year later, and he's just all fucked up. He would be such a great character in the other version. He's just such a good actor. But this one really was lazy, and it felt like it's hard for me to believe it's by the same people who put so much care into the way things look and feel. I think it's hard to make something with production values set in the modern world where the plague's just starting, or whatever it is. Yeah. Anyway, I thought I'm going to keep watching just because I'm curious where it's going to end in a way. Yeah. I watched the last episode of Scream last night. And
don't spoil. I'm on 7.
So what I will say is the last 3, starting with Rodman Flenders, then it's Ty West, and then the final, who I can't remember, wasn't anyone I recognized at the final. Those 3 episodes together feel like good television to me, whereas the rest I wasn't hooked. I was like watching just to watch. Rodman's like kind of blew me away because it's more like Idle Hands, because it's got crazy supernatural like imagery, because dream stuff. So it's like, oh, it really is like him. And then Ty's one, I never could have guessed Ty did it per se, but as soon as I saw his name, I did notice that the performances were like slightly better than other episodes. Wow. And takes felt slightly longer. So it's very marginal, because it really isn't my kind of show, I will be honest. I feel like they've got the groundwork maybe for a good show, and I feel like when it ended on the last night, I feel like I won't ruin anything for you. There's a lot of closure, but it's also very clear there will be another season. So part of me thought, you know what, if this was how you set up, if you went really like just kind of like what we're saying about Salem, if you just took off the gloves and went crazy next season, I don't know if they can do that. It's MTV, who knows?
Yeah,
but I'd be
would
interested.
Figure they'd just start with more new characters. Like they're going to try to continue it.
You'll see when you finish. You'll see. Cool. It makes sense. I will say
liked everything I've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it. It's one of those I wouldn't keep watching if I hated it. It's more just like that. It hardly raises your pulse sometimes. But I will say Rodman's like really surprised me, because it was like it had all this imagery that hadn't been in the show before. So clearly he was probably picked for that one for that reason.
Right.
But it's neat that they're giving directors a chance, to make something. The other one, which I finally only saw, and this was I know Andrew Cash and certain people who were big Jumpcut fans were particularly sad because the day Jumpcut was closing was also the last day of Hannibal.
So
there's a lot of people who are saying like this isn't fair, and I remember feeling very upset when I heard that it was ending here. After watching this episode, I genuinely believe that was one of the best finales of anything ever filmed.
It had
an incredible closure. It had is absolutely gorgeous, and there's something about the way the two characters, and we're not going to, without spoilers.
I'm going to put my fingers
in
my ears.
There'll be no spoilers, but the way they really
No.
connected the storyline of Will and Thingy to give us some sort of closure about it was basically perfect. And I didn't, after it ended, I was like, I don't need any more. That's perfect. Thank you.
They could, but it was, it was it was like,
thank you. You got it right.
What a way to close that show out.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And I love that now it will be its own unique series without connections to other movies. So somebody will finally get a chance to watch it as one big movie. It was just really
Bekah.
great.
She'll get to marathon the whole
So
thing.
Brian Fuller, kudos to you, sir.
Yeah.
You really did
Seriously, well done. Oh, and getting what's it called to do the Love Crime song? Susie and the Banshees, brand new song.
I didn't realize that. Oh, that's cool. I didn't
That's
even
what
pick
plays over the final scene, and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, no, it's and also the guy who plays Red Dragon too is just really great choice. By the last couple episodes, he really kicked some ass in that show.
I like that they did. Because they did the last 6 episodes of Red Dragon, and we've already seen that story twice now.
Yeah.
So what was great was I love the way they kind of mix and matched it. There's a lot of fun surprises in the way that Red Dragon, even the context of Will and Hannibal at this point, because you have 2 seasons before it, and they got to that point in quite a drastically different way than they presented in the movies.
I felt the start of the season didn't work as well as it was just a little disjointed trying to get through too much of Hannibal.
Right. But I think in retrospect, when we watch it all as a whole, it'll probably be a lot more, it'll be better to be marathon. But I don't know if you saw this video, and if not, I'll share it on our Facebook. There's a great video. The one scene that's been done in every version of it is the first time that Will goes to see Hannibal after he's been locked up. And somebody did a supercut of that entire scene where it keeps cutting back between the 3 versions. So
I definitely want to see that.
Yeah, so you see a little bit of Brian Cox.
I know the Manhunter one word for word in that scene.
No, it goes from Brian Cox to what's his name, William Peterson, to Anthony Hopkins, and then it's Mads. It's that scene. It's not like side by side. They just keep cutting on dialogue to the next another version of it. So you get to see the whole scene played out, but with all 3 different people playing all the characters and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really fascinating to watch it that way. And doing that, you're like, wow, Mads and Hugh Vincier are pretty darn great.
I'm going to miss his voice though, Will Graham. Not understanding half the words. I love it.
It's part of the fun.
And then the only film the only film I saw, and began. I'm only going to say this because I'm going to be honest with the audience now. Blumhouse pays for every positive word we say about their movies.
Yeah, according to somebody on iTunes.
There was an iTunes comment that we cannot write back to apparently, but it made some comment now that they're owned by Blumhouse. Well, let me just say for the record, I am not employed by Blumhouse, and I probably said more positive things about. Well, I was obviously somewhat negative on Sinister 2, but I was very positive, fairly positive on Friended. So maybe
I was negative on Sinister 2.
I liked it.
There.
But I will say right now, I would say arguably it might be the best movie Blum has made, and it's a shame that it's like 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, but no one's really talking about it. I saw The Gift.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's I knew I was going to like it from what I'd heard about it, but also I'm a big Joel Edgerton fan in general. Like him and his brother made a really great shorts in Australia as well, and he's a really good actor. But it's I put it up there with probably Insidious and Insidious 1 and 2 as probably the best 3 things as a company they've made, besides Whiplash, which is different from their
catalog. I don't consider Gift to be horror. I think it's more it's definitely like a Hitchcockian thriller.
It's a thriller. It's a very dark
right?
thriller, and so I think it makes sense that they'd make it. I just think it's a sign to use their model to make films a little more out of the box because, his deal, after listening to Bret Easton Ellis, and you guys don't have to respond because your jobs are on the line. But, he has this, this universal deal where anything under $5 million, he doesn't even have to ask permission. So to just repeat the same sequels, it seems, well, you don't need to just do that. You need to keep doing that to keep bringing in big amounts of money. You need your Purge 3s, Purge 4, whatever. But the fact that you could also slip in a couple of these a year and just find a really tight script. This is a very tight script. Everyone's overhyping it's the biggest twist ever. I had told that to one friend. He's a little disappointed because he overhyped it. But it's an amazing twist, and
that
it's
was
a
Matthew
really
Curry Holmes, right?
No, somebody else. It was Webb. If you're listening, it was you. But I really liked it. And I thought everything felt very organic about the film. But the main thing is it's the first film I really thought Jason Bateman was cast perfectly because there's something about him that's I've always thought was a little unlikable.
He plays a total douche.
But usually people try to make him the cool, nice guy, and I'm like, even when I was a kid, I kind of always thought he seemed like a bit arrogant. Yeah. And in this role, it was like perfect. It was just like, oh yeah, you're not like evil or anything, but you're just something about you is kind of, And I just thought all around, Rebecca Hall, who's usually, you know, the Woody Allen movies and stuff, you know, it's just across the board. This is a great thriller. Like, you know, if you liked Gone Girl, it's in that thing, but with a darker, a little bit more home invasion horror undertone for sure.
All right. I really want to see it. I haven't seen it yet.
It's a tight movie. And I mean movie, not just horror movie. It's just a tight thriller. And really, you know, I would go down on my list of one of the better films I've seen this year in general. Wow. But that's, you know, hopefully Bloom hires me too now. I assume that's how this works, right?
Yeah, totally. Here's your money and an envelope.
Cool. Sweet. I am all set. So yeah, so that's what we've seen. It's been a weekend of major shifts, but doesn't stop the amazing guests we're about to have.
Yep. Okay, and welcome back to the show. We are joined by two very special guests that we've been wanting to have on for quite a while. Unbelievable that we're over 100 some odd episodes. We've never had effects artists on the show.
I know.
We're harsh.
These are first.
But we talk about it almost every episode. How CG has ruined.
Yes, exactly. So
we do our part.
So hopefully our guests will agree. Please welcome to the show both Tom Woodruff Jr. and Alec Gillis.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Great. So
we do introduce them as Pumpkinhead. That's very exciting to me.
Yeah, that was my big thrill. The very first time I met him was when we were doing the Blood and Guts episode for Fangoria, and I remember that when we walked in, and one of our guys leaned over and was like, "You realize that's Pumpkinhead, right?" And I was like, "Are you fucking serious?" Like it was just wonderful.
I do want to get to that eventually, but the second you were in the costume, did you regret agreeing to be Pumpkinhead?
Well, yeah, that was part of my show here with He Who Shall Not Be Named. But we talked about Pumpkinhead, and does my voice sound right? Yes. Oh, we're recording now. Oh my God! And that's where I made the sturdy prediction that I will direct the reboot of Pumpkinhead.
Hey,
so we're passing. I figure if I keep saying it enough times, it will just happen.
Let's make it.
I'm really hoping that happens.
It deserves it. I mean, we're going to talk more about Pumpkinhead, but we talked about how it's one of the great American myths. I think in terms of horror films, it's one of the few.
It's a rural horror, and it's the best kind of legend. What are we using?
It's a real rural horror.
It's a tongue twister horror.
What did you say? What did you say?
Rural. I can't say it.
Okay.
It's a rural horror.
It is. It's a lot like a Stephen King story. Not a specific one, but it's in the.
But it's got a great feel. It's got a feel to it of being a real legend, right?
Yeah,
they just talk about. They don't talk about let's start a new legend. It's just the damn thing exists, and they deal with it.
Mocking and the rhyme that they have. It's like that should have existed for years.
But then they went and explained it in the sequels, and that's why sequels are tough.
The sequels went in the wrong direction. I say that, and I say, whatever. I didn't see them all.
I didn't see any sequels.
All right, I'll go.
I saw the second one, but the problem was just that they explained the myth, and when you explain the myth, that thing I don't want to know.
You shouldn't have known why.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. So we'll get to that.
Yeah. Well,
there's so much more before.
I am so jumping, aren't I?
I know there's so much to talk about, but you know what? I do want to go back, not to the very beginning, not to birth, but to the beginning of your careers.
Beginning of time.
Because again, I've interviewed these guys a dozen occasions, and for Alec, one of my favorite stories that I've ever gotten out of you is I interviewed you for all the Corman stuff. So Battle Beyond the Stars, Galaxy of Terror, and all that kind of stuff.
All our best episodes have a Corman connection. I mean, as you would expect.
They should.
But that was the beginning for you, right? At the Corman stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think I went in. I was around 19 when my sister hooked me up with a guy who was working on Battle Beyond the Stars, and I got this opportunity to go show my portfolio. Everything I was doing was out of my mom's garage at the time, and I was a little insecure about my portfolio. So I said, "Can I bring a friend?" And the friend happened to be James Cameron in his school book delivery days. Wow. And I thought, well, this guy's like 25, and he's got paintings and models, and he shot a little 35 millimeter movie. Aces, I'm in. So we went and interviewed with Chuck Comiskey and the Skotak brothers, and then immediately 9 months later, we were hired.
Wow. Hollywood is a speedy beast, isn't it?
That's funny.
And what about you, Tom? Because I'm not really sure if you didn't do Corman stuff too.
No, see, my history is a mystery.
It is.
It is. It's exciting. No, of course. Just all leading up to this moment. My first film was for Charlie Band. Again, very appropriate.
So pretty much the other.
The Band or Corman story.
The other version.
And I got called in for an interview working at Makeup Effects Lab. It was my first job. And so I went in with Steven Spielberg by my side. And Steven had some paintings and Academy Awards and such.
Which Charlie Band films did you work on?
She says films with an S. I worked on, there should have been more. I worked on the first of the 3-part movie that didn't get completed. Three-part epic called Metal Storm.
We've actually talked about that a lot on the show. Because Elric insists that he saw this movie in 3D. Which one?
I'm sure he did.
No, but see, I thought I saw Krull in 3D
and I
as a
tell
kid.
you, he didn't see Krull in 3D. He saw Metal Storm in 3D.
So people are telling me it's Metal Storm. I have to revisit.
Wow.
It's Metal Storm. Krull was not released in 3D. Metal Storm.
Oh, but you saw the zombies, right? Our mutated zombies.
I don't know. I just remember this thing that spins and it comes at you, and a cyclops and a witch and a spider. I'm pretty sure
that's not Metal Storm.
So for just really quick for both of you, was there because there's so much to the art of effects, was there something specific that both of you wanted to kind of focus on, whether it be model making or just doing makeups and stuff like that? What was like the thing you had the passion for just getting into the movie business?
I had the passion for model love making, but I couldn't get the models. But I could not get the models to return my phone calls.
Excellent.
I think my passion was. I had the general passion of just wanting to make monster movies, right? And mixed in there was equal parts of a passion for makeup, a passion for Ray Harryhausen animation, a passion for gorilla suits, robot costumes, and right, all this stuff. As a kid, you grow up and seeing it on TV, which I'm amazed to see has so much fantasy stuff on TV again. It does remind me of the Irwin Allen stuff back in the '60s, where you just couldn't escape it. It was everywhere, every night, somewhere on TV. You'd find something really cool and different.
I think if you idolized Ray Harryhausen and John Chambers, as we both did on opposite sides of the country, then you're into creatures and miniatures in the way that Harryhausen was. And I never saw a distinction between a rocky cliff miniature and a stop motion model. It was just all effects. And if you're into John Chambers, you're into makeup and that kind of creature making. So to us, it all felt like it was all part of the same, big old bowl.
Mm-hmm. The skeleton fight scene in Jason and the Argonauts is still one of the most mesmerizing sequences ever on cinema. I still watch that.
Insanely labor intensive.
Yeah, the time consuming nature of stop motion is insane.
And that kind of editorial sense that goes on in your mind to keep track of all the little limbs of 7 skeletons and all that.
Crazy. But you see the credits for a sequence like that, and unlike today, it would be 270 CGI people. It was one person's name.
Wow.
We talk about that
partly because he was a glory hog, but
he cut out 269 people. We talk about it on the show a lot with other people, but I'm really curious from your perspective. Like, for instance, we were using Mama as an example. It's a pretty good movie, but you get to that end, and there's a CG, I think, kind of hovering, and at a certain point, you kind of can't look at it anymore. And we talked with somebody about the Uncanny Valley, which is something where you see something that looks like say it's a robot or ex machina, and it's close to human, but it's not, and it's almost like a queasyness that you can't keep looking.
It's the moment when you realize it's fake,
right? The fake, even if you're not consciously aware it's fake, it's that moment. And I was thinking, why do we accept even sometimes bad man in a suit films, the cheesy ones? Somehow I can watch that without ever questioning what I'm seeing. But as soon as I see CG, I wondered, from your perspective, having, you've probably been replaced at times even with CG, how do you guys feel about that relationship when you're watching it?
One of us has been replaced right now. One of us is CG. So
I was having an uncanny feeling about this guy.
Well, that whole question, I think, to me hinges on suspension of disbelief. And when something is actually in the same lighting and the same environment as the actors that you believe are real, then you kind of automatically accept it. The downside, traditional downside of what we do is that dynamic sometimes suffer, right? That's why if you go back to Ghoulies or whatever, some puppet movie like that,
which we didn't do.
Right. You will see. That's just it's charming. It still has a charm to it, and I think that's what you're seeing is that it might not be good work, but it's charming.
Right.
And there's something that's just not quite charming about bad CGI. There's something real and tangible, and at least you go, well, somebody made that. They might be incompetent, but they made that. When you
said bad CGI, so even I'd argue even great, like perfect CGI can be.
There's I'm sure you guys have read this. I saw a great little video on the what is that thing? It was that at ADI we're cutting corners. We're on the statewide web.
Yeah.
Has that been used yet? It's
a drought in California.
Okay. There's a great video. I don't know who did it, but one of the things he said was that anyone who's commenting about the look of CGI is noticing bad CGI because there's tons of great CGI you never notice. There's tons of great CGI in Mad Max in the latest one, right?
Yeah.
And it comes and goes and washes over you, and you totally accept it. It's when it's pushed to its limits, or when it's oversaturated or overdone, or I think Tom and I would argue. And we've spoken to our friend Josh Cordes, which that's your buddy. He would say, well, shit, I don't want to do bad work, but they dump all this stuff on us and don't give us enough time. So here we are at the end of the movie doing work that we know should be better. And then, we get trashed for it afterwards. And we have tons of sympathy for people because we've been in that situation where we're asked to throw something together and it's got to shoot tomorrow morning. And you're like, oh, how's it going to be lit? What are you going to, and you worry and you kvetch and you don't know how it's going to be used at the end. But anyway.
But when they use it to clean up things, I totally get it. But then I think back to the movies you guys made and go, you didn't have anything to clean up. Like, how the hell did you, like Tremors or Aliens? I'm like, how do you do that without having something to clean that up? Yeah. Like, where are the strings? I guess I just don't get it.
Oh, well, I think part of the answer there is the director. A director knows how to use it as an asset and not see it as a challenge. And we've had great experiences. Cameron, obviously, as much as he is total CGI now, he knew how to make the practical stuff work. When you look at Terminator, when you look at even there's so much stuff in T2 that was practical. But we've also worked with directors who don't understand it, and they may, in some cases, they are more familiar with CG solution. So they get on set and they literally have no idea how to. They're so uncomfortable having to make a single decision that's going to be based the template on how the rest of the movie is seen that they don't want to do it. There are too many people that are too used to having this movie which becomes a machine in its own right being produced, a block at a time, and they want to wait till they get to the end where they can all sit down in a screening room and look at it and mull over and say, what about this and what about that? And you lose the vitality and you lose the excitement factor of a director on set trying to catch this lightning in a bottle out of performances and image and all of that stuff that is magical is so mitigated to a whole corporate let's sit down and figure this out kind of attitude.
And part of the art, and this thing we always talk about with acting, is part of the art of cinema is the reaction shot. So if you guys are using a creature and who's an actor in a suit, that reaction shot you're getting from the other actor, is genuine. They're reacting to a creature. Yeah. So if it's nothing there, they're acting a reaction.
I mean, there was a moment in AVP, which no matter how you feel about the movie, I hope you agree with us that the effects in that are pretty great, and it's a great blend of CGI and practical stuff. But we set our Queen Alien up. We built a hydraulic Queen Alien that had 75 points of movement, 20 feet tall, all that stuff, and it was computer controlled, so we could make it, come to a point, right, and roar. And so we did that with a little, apple box and sandbag. Okay, the actress's head is going to be about right here. We actually got her in, took a measurement. Here's where you're going to sit. That's where the Queen has to go, 2 inches from that spot in space. Drilled it, re-recorded it, drilled it, and said, okay, let's bring a stuntman in, right? Stuntman's got to sit in there and, just in case something goes wrong. And we did it, 20 times, works great. And they said, let's bring the actress in and put her in front so she can get a feel for this. And we said, please don't. Please sit her there and let this head do its thing. And the only warning we gave her is don't lean forward. Keep your head pegged against the back wall, right? And the reaction was great. And we've seen that so many times in Alien 3. That was a cool moment where Sigourney turns away, and Tom's puppeting the head coming in.
Oh, the great shot.
I've got the tongue coming in. And she's feeling it, and you see it as a puppeteer and you see it as an audience member. It's real.
It goes back to the little blood flick that goes from Alien, the original, where it goes on the actress who had no idea. And that reaction shot is one of the best shots in cinema because it gets you.
Poor Veronica Cartwright.
A great moment though.
Oh yeah.
When did you guys initially hook up? To form ADI? I mean, did you work?
Thank you for clarifying. I don't know where you're going.
I was ready to answer. Well, the first time, and I knew it was going to go this way. I'm looking at the felt on the table, and at the seats where Alec and I are sitting, just so I can paint the picture correctly for the listener. The felt on the table is shredded, so you either put people through through tough questions, or you've been interviewing cats.
They actually do have a pet show in here. I kid you not. They do. They do. They are something like that. There's dogs in here, right?
People bring dogs all the time.
There's dogs,
A pet show.
Well, Adam Green just left with a dog.
Yeah, Adam Green just
walked out of here a minute ago. Yeah.
So I know there's times I've walked in and I'm like, there's dog hair all over the table.
Do guests ever sneeze when you're...
Not yet.
No? Okay.
Should warn them.
That way, not into the mic.
So we met at Stan Winston's. I think I started working for Stan in about 85, right around the time of Invaders from Mars. And by the way, tribute to Wes Craven. I remember being at, I think I had worked about 2 weeks at Stan's, and he invited us all over to a party. And I remember thinking, that's so cool. I don't know that I've ever been invited to a party.
We had worked on the TV movie Chiller that Wes Craven directed.
That's what it was.
And we had done it was a really cool story, right? A guy that's frozen, cryogenically frozen, brought back to life, and did his soul come back with him? Michael Beck, right? Was the
actor was super creepy.
Super creepy. The guy was from Warrior.
Right? Oh yeah,
excellent guy. And Wes was just so cool as a director. And then so Stan invited us all over to a party one night, and Wes was there.
And there's I'm standing there's Stan Winston. Oh my God! As if that's not enough, Wes Craven is standing right there, and then Dave Thomas from SCTV was there.
Yeah, he was one of the producers.
Wow, this is a Steel Collar Man, right?
Oh,
so it was all going around on at the same time. Anyway, Wes Craven, that's our shout out to him.
Yeah,
R.I.P. But so 85, I started working at around that time, Invaders from Mars, and so Stan packed the guys up, and we built some stuff for Aliens in Los Angeles, in Northridge, and then everybody left except for me. Stan said, "You got to stay behind." And, at the Harbor Star, out in Long Beach, whatever that is, San Pedro. And you're going to run the set for Invaders from Mars. And I thought, that's cool. Toby Hooper. Shit, I want to go to England. But so I was there for a few months, and then I joined up with Tom, I think, right around Halloween. I came over, and, the guys were all in full swing, building and shooting, I think, by that point, right?
Oh, maybe we
felt like it.
Back in the day where you would have a script written and ready to go, and then you'd start the production.
Oh.
So it would basically you just go there and do what you're supposed to do.
And you'd build for 6 months instead of 3 months, right? 6 or 9 months. And so Stan tended to put Tom and I together on projects like the Bishop, the tail going through Bishop and him splitting in half. And, so he'd say those guys work together well. And I remember on that show, he said, the things that make you guys work well together are exactly the things that are going to take you away from me. And I was like, what are you talking about? Why would we ever want to leave this, And then we did Predator and Pumpkinhead and Leviathan and Alien Nation. I was only there for about 2.5 years, and it was like just a career's worth of stuff going on.
There's always different stuff. I mean, all that in the makeup that we did for the feature Alien Nation, there was more makeup there than Planet of the Apes in its day. So we were really thrilled about that.
The feature or the show?
The feature.
Oh yeah.
And then the Aliens with the first time we ever worked with hydraulics was that Queen head. So we were doing big monsters. We were doing makeups. We were doing men in suits. We got to do Monster Squad, where we got to do our own take on all the old Universal classic monsters.
Gillman.
Yeah.
You're in the suit?
He's the Gillman, yeah.
Isn't it funny? I'm the Gillman, but this is Gillman sitting next to me.
And why did you, I mean, you probably answered this a million times, but why did you choose to play the creature in things like Pumpkinhead and the Gillman and Monster Squad? I mean, is that the sort of thing? I know I always hear a story of when you're doing makeup on yourself as a kid, it's like you always do that yourself.
No, I have. It's like you know what? Because nobody stopped me. Because and it wasn't like I was. It's not like it would have taken a real forceful no. If somebody would have just put a finger up to their chin and said, I don't know, I probably would have said, no, that makes sense. It shouldn't be me. but I was a kid, I moved down here. It's all I've ever wanted to do. So I'm out here, and what happened? Oh, we had a body cast of me because I was building my own gorilla suit. And then the whole thing came up with Monster Squad. And I thought, God, I'd love to play that creature. And this was after Aliens, when I thought, God, I'd like to play an alien. And I didn't say anything. So I thought, you know what? I went to Stan. I said, I've got a life cast all ready to go. Can I play the Gillman? And he almost put his finger up to his chin. Thank God he did. And he said, yeah, let's see. So he talked to the producers, and they came back and said, sure, because back then it didn't matter. And today, every decision is so scrutinized. We did a movie. We did a movie semi-recently that we won't name, but it was the sequel to Percy Jackson, which could be any one of a dozen movies. But
the effects in it were quite good, though, so well done.
Well, most of ours were cut out. But there was Polyphemus, right? This big Cyclops character. The producer said, this character's going to be 10 feet tall. And we're going, wow, that's going to be, how are we going to do it? And they said, it's a guy in a suit, and they loved this talking gorilla head that we had created. And they said, Polyphemus should be the same thing, an animatronic head with lip sync, blah, blah, blah. And they said, and we'll just shoot him in front of a green screen, and we'll complement at the right height. And that's when Alec said, well, then put Tom in the suit. Well, how tall is he? He's 6'2". And they said, oh, well, we've got somebody who's 7'1" that we want to put in the suit. And it's like, well, you're going to comp us in either way. So there's seven. So there's seven, and their 7'1" guy is an actor, Robert Mallet, who was in Sherlock Holmes, right? The guy is
the Strain.
And the Strain. And the guy is an actor. He's a really good actor. And we put him in a rubber suit, and we put a rubber, and so basically figure for a character that's going to be shot and comped into a scene, they decided I was too small. Even though I had all of this experience and I'm willing to be buried in a suit. So, it's like back in the day, we probably could have come in and said Tom should be in this suit, and they go, okay. We don't care as long as it looks cool.
And let's give a shout out to Robert, because he is a wonderful guy. And the point of that story is not that Robert Maillet did anything wrong.
No, not at all.
Robert is a terrific performer, but he is just born to see that face, right, and to do some makeup on it and all that stuff.
Is he the big guy from the Strain, the master?
Yeah.
Okay. Really cool looking guy.
With the chains on his, and he's a very good performer. But it's a question of, like, you put any great performer. We've had mimes, we've had stuntmen crash and burn, because what Tom can do is put a mask on and perform blind. He can walk through a scene with the head off and then put a mask on that renders him sightless and repeat the moves and bring life to it and give variations. It's an uncanny ability that really nobody else has. So we're like the kids in the back going, this really is the guy that you want. And then we get this, well, he's not close enough to 10 feet tall. I don't understand what the objection is exactly. But it could also be, as we talk about, that it was shooting in Canada and they wanted to get a Canadian local, and there's all these budget constraints. And then you wonder in retrospect, and were they already just kind of thinking we're going to replace it anyway? We'll do this just to have something, just in case it works, but we're not really going to commit to it. Sometimes that happens, right, where they're not really like embracing the technique, so they sort of give you limited funds and just sort of like, okay, some of us really want this, but some of them, some of us aren't really sold. So
they don't realize they can save money too.
Well, I don't think they care. No, they still. Everybody believes CG it costs less than practical stuff, and it's exactly the opposite. But that's an interesting point. So you get kind of this half-hearted support. So, and basically, what it comes down to, okay, we're not 100% sure what you're going to do is going to be was going to work. So we're going to underfund it and give you far too little time to build it. And then when it comes out and it's not to everybody's exact specs, they go, see, we knew it. It's like they paint you into a corner and then they say, look, you're in a corner.
We've started saying to people like, look, we sense your trepidation. We don't want to force this on you because we'd rather not have stuff cut out of a movie and then have fans asking us, did you guys screw up or what? Right. Keep your money. Give it to the digital guys then, right? Give the paltry sum you were going to give to us to the Josh Cortezes who can use it and who can really. But the same thing happens to digital people too. This very same thing where they sort of go like, yes, this is what it is. And well, it's sort of we'll figure it out as we go. And then right before the end of the movie, they're forced into a decision. And that's when these guys are like, shit, we really wish we had something practical on set. You know, digital effects people will say that. So this kind of like feud between CG and practical stuff, it doesn't really exist. It exists from a fan perspective, but when you start looking at the mechanics of it, you go, oh, everybody's in the same boat. Everybody is a bunch of artists that are controlled by a bunch of bureaucrats.
That's every single interview I've ever done with both digital side and effects side. They've all said the exact same thing. It's like they want to work together. You create the monster suit, I'll take the zipper out type stuff.
And they love it, right?
And that's how it's supposed to
probably why they fell in love with it, right?
Well, here's the thing. Again, if you take the adults away, right, the corporate producer, you take them away and you put the digital guys down in the room with us, and all of a sudden we've had digital guys go, thank God you guys are here to build this part of the creature. And then we're going, seriously, you guys can do that. Do the legs because it will take us forever to build a puppet that can walk with the legs contacting the floor and look like it's got some weight. And so left to our own, I think effects would be a couple of steps better than what they are right now when they're the production model right now is very divisive, right? It's like producers will come to us and say, build the monsters for this movie. And we go, okay, how much money have you got? We have no idea. We'll come in and say, okay, it's $1 million. They go, we only have $500,000. So at the same time it took us to determine that it was $1 million, they suddenly gleaned the moment, I only have half of what you told me. Yeah. So, and then they do the same thing to the digital people. So it is really tough. Alec brought up an interesting point that I have to comment on because otherwise I'll forget it. I may forget it while I'm speaking about it. It's like you said, Alec. It's like movies today now. There is an acknowledgement that hey, the audience loves practical stuff. Let's give the audience practical stuff. And to his end, J.J. Abrams is doing exactly that, and it could not be a better feeling, right? We were trying to do it much earlier. We have a much smaller voice than J.J. Abrams. But it has become noted among the studios that we've got to let the audience know there's practical effects, even if they don't use them that much. And it has not been that long since it was the reverse on Fantastic Four with the Silver Surfer, with Doug Jones in this beautiful foam bodysuit that looks like real chrome. And the studio was putting out stories that it was CG. And the studio said because the audience knows it's a guy in a suit, it's not going to do well. So
it's cheap.
We've come around. At least we've come around in one way.
Yeah, and that's speaking of that Fantastic Four. I mean, there's a moment. I hate that they dubbed Doug Jones' voice out and put in Lawrence Fishburne or whoever it was, but there's a period where he loses his board and it's him in a suit, and I think he looks way cooler when he's kind of weird and chrome and odd like physically on set than any of the CG stuff they did in that movie.
And that's why you'll never be a studio executive.
You never know. You're not executive material.
You never know. I'm going to jump around a little bit because what you guys are touching upon now I think is important when it comes to Alec's directorial debut, feature directorial debut. The last time I saw both of you guys together was for after the Thing prequel came out. And you guys had started doing StudioADI videos on YouTube, which are fantastic. I think right before that, Steve Johnson had started doing something similar.
Rules.
And it was great. It was great because he has all this VHS footage of all like a giant animatronic Hulk. And it's like, nope, they said no to this. And you see it on YouTube and you're just like, but that looks amazing.
Yeah, disappointing.
So I think that was, I don't want to say a turning point, but I think that was eye-opening when you guys released your Thing video, because everyone's talking about the movie and like, oh, well, I like this or I didn't like that or the girl survived. I thought nobody survived this movie or whatever the case was. But then you see all the work that you guys did and you're like, where's that in the movie? That was good, solid stuff.
It was amazing. I remember that video so well. And even I remember that same time going through Universal's maze. They did the Thing maze. And I remember going through that and seeing just these amazing effects and going, why weren't these in the movie? And I remember that the person I was going through with was like, oh, they were supposed to be. And then explained the whole thing that those were like actually some of the creatures that you guys built.
It was kind of the... it's not the first time that we did something that was replaced digitally. It was happening to Rick Baker, right? I'd still love to see some video of his transformation from the Wolfman that was cut from the film.
There's tiny snippets on the making of on the Blu-ray.
Oh, really?
Because Rick always does the makeup on himself first.
He's got tons of footage, I'm sure.
And you see a couple seconds of him transforming himself into the Wolfman, and it looks amazing. It's like, what a sin they didn't let him do that transformation.
And he got the same thing happened on, I think, the first Men in Black, and thereafter it was getting a shrinking little pond. So it's not like we were unique in that our stuff was replaced, but the drag was that because the Botine's work was so seminal in the 82 version that everybody had a big expectation for animatronics, and the filmmakers sincerely wanted that to be the case as well. And we talked about the 80-20 split of 80% practical and 20% digital, and we were doing things within the frame where we were going to have limbs that were transforming that were tracked onto animatronic torsos, so that you'd have something locking it into the scene, and when the movie, we were doing press, Ain't It Cool News. We were like, yes, it's going to be 80%. You have my word. As if like, why do we give our word? We can't give our word. We'll never, not if it's out of our control. And then, of course, people were saying, you lied. Gillis and Woodruff lied. They're liars. First they fucked up Giger's Alien, and now this. So we put after the movie came and went and did its business, and I kind of enjoyed the movie. I mean, nothing is ever going to be Carpenter's The Thing, but I think that Matthias von Hanninger, who directed it, had a very loving hand with it, and really, I think that he did a very good job with, he just can't fight a studio decision. He can't.
Where do they come to that decision? If you're guessing that decision, was that from test cards?
It is a total guess on our part, but we can tell you that we walked a studio exec through when we were doing the work on The Thing, and we had gotten some emails from people, who just send it to the general info at StudioADI, and one of them said, please do not fuck this movie up, and we highlighted that, use animatronics and makeup wherever possible. CGI only for set extensions and landscapes and, that kind of thing. And we highlighted and we had it pinned up, and we walked a studio exec by and we went, oh, by the way, here's some of the fan mail that we're getting. And she looked at it and read the highlighted stuff and went, yeah, right, and walked on, right?
Oh, my God.
So we're like, hey, okay, nothing's protected here, so anything can happen, it would only be a guess, but my guess is that it's I think Tom would agree that they delayed the release of the film, right? So there's a natural tendency for any artist and any filmmaker to want to improve the work, and they don't know when to stop. A lot of artists don't know when to stop. It's not just studio people or executives are dumb or this or that or whatever. They just don't know when to stop. So they start overworking and over nuancing things, and pretty soon it's like, you know what? We could make that animatronic face twitch. You know what? Well, if we're going to make it twitch, we should just replace it, right? And then we can really make it twitch, and then it just starts like bubbling all over the place, and it's crazy. What we, in our opinions, would say is, that's excessive, and it's not rooted in physical reality.
Because post-production's so easy now compared to when everything was shot on film.
Yeah,
and
you
cost a lot to change things back then.
You can, but should you? you, right? So there's that, and then there's also like this idea that like when you read a joke in a script, you laugh. When you see it performed, you laugh again, and then you see it for the 30,000th time in the editing room, and you think this joke's not funny anymore. And I think it loses its luster, in effect, loses its luster. Whereas, as Tom was pointing out, back in the day, like in Aliens, you shoot that, you have no other option. You really don't have options. So it's editorial. That's where you help it and fix it and make the saves. You don't just go get rid of that object within the frame and replace it with a synthetic version of that. So.
Right. Not seeing it, the thing that you've shot, sometimes is more important than. See, I think that was the problem with Mama. If I saw a glimpse of it, it might have been scary, Yeah.
Actually,
but if I stare at it.
Have you seen the video on YouTube?
I've heard about the practical.
It's scary as hell.
It's scary as shit. Yeah, it's crazy.
That movie, it felt to me like a movie that they did test cards on, and then they reshot the ending. That whole ending of them up on the cliff, that cliff just looked like a phony plaster cliff shot against a green screen, and they went for the big somewhere. I'll bet you some response cards came back going like, ugh, we want this to be a little more positive. This is too, so they're looking for some other swirling, beautiful, because it changes direction there. It was going in a good direction, but I think somebody wussed out and put $1 million into the end of that movie.
Right.
I think that was also the film, right? I think there's a shot where the creature is coming down the hall in the background and it's out of focus, a CG creature out of focus, which is undeniably very, very cool in that shot. And again, kudos to the person that said, look, I don't care how much money you're putting into it, throw it out of focus and make it believable for the shot. And that to me is what's lacking. There's so much stuff where the CG stuff is put up front and center, easy to see, lots of stuff going on. It's almost like a big sign that says, hey, look at me, instead of working it into the scene or into a shot.
Interesting.
That's a good point.
Two fun little quick tidbits on the thing prequel that you probably don't know about. Number one, Dean Cundy, who was on our show and shot John Carpenter's, inquired and said he would have happily shot the prequel, but then nobody wanted to meet him on it.
Wow.
He just thought, it would be fun to do the other one, give it some consistency with John's, but it didn't happen. Yeah. Number two, the year that came out, I was working at Amoeba Music in Hollywood, and I'd often ring up Rob Bottin, and I asked him, what horror movie are you most looking forward to? He's like, can't wait to see The Thing.
I wonder why we haven't heard from him. That's pretty cool. You mean Rob Bottin would answer the phone when you would ring?
No, he would come in and buy only physically in person.
Really?
Yes. Wow. He'd buy weird stuff.
Was he wearing like a cowl?
I didn't recognize him for the first 2 or 3 times that he came in.
Was he always different?
No, he's just giant beard and buy stuff like the Scooby-Doo box set. And I'm like, who is this guy?
I have a Scooby-Doo box set.
But the whole reason I brought that up is because I feel that the video and just the response to it and stuff, I almost feel as that Harbinger Down is kind of a direct result of that feedback, of the work that you guys did for that. So, I mean, was that something you've been thinking about for a long time in terms of a directorial debut? Was that the thing that set it off?
No, actually, I mean, we just started looking at this and going like, well, look, there's a whole bunch of people that are sympathetic to what we went through. Not that we, boo-hoo, whatever, we're big boys, our work got cut, move on, whatever. Although it was feeling kind of like, maybe we finally should have been listening to what people were saying back in '92 or whenever it was that Jurassic Park came out, when tons of people, there was an exodus out of creature effects and into digital stuff, right? Like, and we just at that point just went, well, yeah, it's a fantastic technique. Can't wait to use it with our work, right? And so that's how we had been approaching things. So it did feel like it was again a shrinking pool. At that point, the pool felt kind of dry then, but. We just said, well, look, there's an online network of people who are very interested in what happened on The Thing, and these people also love practical effects. And there's this thing called Kickstarter. What if we put just see if there's a match there? And so, that was the pitch. We'll do a movie that's like The Thing. That's like literally like The Thing and Alien, right? Because those, what I said in the pitch was those are the two twin pillars of 80s, even though, yes, I know Alien came out in 79, but 80s practical effects, sci-fi horror. And those are the kinds of movies that are most gone away now, right? So what if we do this homage, this love letter to the two of them? We don't have the rights to either one of them, but we'll do something that gives you the same sort of feeling that you didn't get when you watched The Thing 2011. And I say it's like cinematic meatloaf, it's like home cooking comfort food, so that was the kind of plan, and our 3,000 plus backers, funded it, and then we got some additional investment from Sultan Saeed Al Darmaki of Dark Dunes, and with his investment, we were able to put much more on screen because we would have been worried, if it had just been too limited, we'd be like, oh God, even we need something to work with here. So that was sort of the genesis of it, and then it's interesting because as the movie was getting done, we were getting interest in distribution. So, which is nice. You always love that. I know now that I don't, Sultan put his money in and he'd like to at least get that money back. He's a fan. He loves this stuff. So for him, it was sort of like it was an investment, no doubt about it, but it was also an investment based on his love of the genre. So, we made the distribution deal, and then we had to, actually go about finishing the film, which was a 2-year process. So anyway, that's the story.
And now it's out officially.
Yeah. It is out and available at Best Buy and Hulu and Amazon, I don't know.
Wow. Now, you guys shot the majority of that on a soundstage, right?
A little warehouse. Thank you for calling it a soundstage. It's a warehouse it's in Chatsworth, right around the corner from ADI, and it was all, it goes back to the Roger Corman, Charlie Band days, right? This is how we grew up. We know how to do this kind of stuff. Egg crates on the side of walls and Battle Beyond the Stars and all that kind of stuff. And that I love that stuff personally. I love that, where you're flying by the seat of your pants. You're going, by no rights should we be doing a movie like this, of this scope, with this budget or this time schedule or whatever. But screw it, we're going to do it, right? Because 3,000 people say, yeah, go do it, It has widened out now, that it did get distribution. I think there's a certain population of the people who look and go, huh? They're like, what? So our 3,000 backers go, yes, it's like the 80s. And other people outside go, it's like the 80s? So, I don't know.
They're born in 2000 after all. That's the crazy part.
You can't win. And Tom, you also have a film that you directed called Fire City, if I'm not mistaken. And I haven't seen the film. I saw the trailer, which also looks like it has a lot of elaborate makeups and cool things.
Well, that one seems more like fantasy based.
It's very fantasy based. We call it a demon noir because we've taken and what I've always wanted to do for the longest time, which was to take creature characters but integrate them into a real life kind of environment. And that's what is nice about the story, is that to other demons, they appear as demons. To human beings, they appear as human beings. And there's a lot of fun going back and forth between those two worlds. But it was interesting because I shot my film around the same time Alec did. I also did Kickstarter via, the ADI fans and supporters. And we had far less money to work with and less time. So and luckily my scope was smaller. So Alec was out making a giant monster movie, and I'm going out and making a makeup character movie. So it's like we both got to go out and do something different, but still something that is very much in our wheelhouse in terms of creature creators. I look at mine as a kind of cinematic SpaghettiOs because I didn't have enough money for giant-sized meatballs.
It's interesting. You ask, was this like something that I think you would agree, Tom, that neither of these movies are movies that, like, since childhood we said we must make these movies. But what was cool about it, what was so inspiring about it, was the fans. The Kickstarter fans funding it and basically voting and giving you that vote of confidence, where you don't have to walk into a room, Can you imagine if we walked into a room and tried to pitched these ideas to anybody? Like I know for Harbinger, if I said I want to make a movie that is a combo of Alien and The Thing, and stars Lance Henriksen and a whole bunch of unknowns. We'll shoot it in a warehouse in Chatsworth, and it'll be full of rubber monsters. What? Nobody's gonna fund that.
As soon as you said Alien, I mean, they'd immediately be like 30 million easily.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, and Alec would be in the room saying it's not Alien and it's not The Thing, but it's like those movies. And then 2 sentences later, somebody would say, you can't get the rights to Alien and The Thing.
Now, did you guys try to pitch either of those, or did you just say, F it, we're just going to go straight to Kickstarter and do it our own?
Alex was his own thing. Alec's project was his own. He developed it. He wrote it, right? Mine was a script that had already been developed by the writers and producers Michael Hayes and Brian Labaki. And that came about in a different way in that they came to us years ago to create a character for this trailer for this gigantic film they had written called Fire City. And it was all demon lore. And I looked at the script, and it was like, it got to a point where page after page there was some gigantic demon character, and there were fights in the sky between winged demons, and it was a gigantic movie. And they said that, no surprise, they were having trouble getting it financed. And they said people loved the script. They said their agent took it to Cannes, and producers wanted it right away. And the guys from Michael and Brian found out very quickly that meant the producers wanted the project, and they didn't want Michael and Brian. And Michael and Brian thought, well, we'll be producers or something. They said, no. And they said, well, it may well be some kind of like executive producer. No. They said, well, what, some kind of advisor? No, you don't understand. We want to make this movie, but we don't need or want you. And to their credit, right? I mean, you can imagine a lot of people think, all right, so this is my, first outing. I'm going to sacrifice the firstborn, and we'll see what happens. But these guys held tight and said, nope. That's not the way. That's not why we got here. That's not what brought us here. And they held on to it. And then the trailer went well and everything. And then they decided, let's do a Kickstarter movie, but instead of trying to do this giant movie, let's write a new story, which is sort of the prequel to the Fire City, and to introduce the world and introduce the character. So that's ultimately what they wrote that I directed.
It's great.
Wow.
So these were assignments in a way, and we figured we need to do this not only because the fans are asking for it, but because these are our roots. Low budget movies are our roots. We've worked in big budget movies, and yes, there are great big budget movies, and visuals can stand a much better chance of looking good if you've got the budget to redo things and to rework. But this is the risk taking, right? And it all sort of, in my mind, it kind of rolls into this argument about embracing practical effects. Practical effects gives you a unpredictability and a serendipity and an organic, unplanned, uncontrollable quality to it. Within all the control that you're trying to put on it, there's still aspects that are uncontrolled. Makeup, like in Fire City, you put a makeup on and you've got that actor inside that is that uncontrollable aspect, as opposed to the perfectly controlled pixel by pixel world of digital filmmaking where you have too much control. And that's why it looks so synthetic, because all of the flaws are beaten out of it and everything's so refined. And I feel that's the case with low-budget indie movies as well. There's always something I loved about the Corman movies back in the day, where they were a little funky, they were a little rough around the edges, but there was a glee to them and a spirit about them that was really very attractive and missing in many of today's films.
Yeah. Obviously it seemed at this point for both of you that directing was the next logical step. But is that the sort of thing that you want to continue doing now?
Sure.
Yeah, without question.
Yeah, that's the fun part. The fun part's the directing. The not so fun part is distribution and sales and all that stuff. So if there was a way to direct, distribute, I mean, this is my thought. Tom and I don't necessarily share opinions all the time, which is also what makes, I think, the work more interesting. Because
no, it doesn't.
This is what I'm talking about. Is that if there's a way to directly distribute and that you can get rid of like the next layer of middle people, I don't want to be sexist and call all middlemen bad, because middle women are just as bad as middlemen. But all those gatekeepers who sit there and say, no. I mean, the process of independent, low-budget filmmaking is designed to make salespeople and distributors money. Mm-hmm. And the people who are actually sweating the blood and the tears are not the ones who are in line to get their money back. And it's not right. It's just not right, you know.
It could be a way around that. I mean, one thing, we talk about Kickstarter a lot, but one way could be a future model like that where the only thing that it does is buys the ticket, but it's done in advance. And so it's $20 and it's across the board and there's no other prices, but your movie gets funded on that ticket.
Aren't there a couple Kickstarters that are doing that?
Kickstarters do. I'm saying a site that isn't Kickstarter that only is basically early ticket. Early ticket, and you get to make it without any bullshit.
Early DVD.
DVD sales.
It's very much it's very much like that site Best Seat, right? Which I actually started. So just back off, man.
Just come up with that. Yes. But you know, I mean, I'm not up to speed on. I know there was something called Spotify that was being hosted by the Scottish government or something, where it was for digital releases, digital downloads, and all that stuff. Which has its. I still don't understand. You know how, like, there are torrent sites where you can see Harbinger down right now and pops up on YouTube, and our distributor doesn't seem to care. You know, so we chase it down like good little, you know, useful idiots, and we stop it, but it pops up again. So I don't know. And there's 3,000 views here and 6,000 views here. So that, to me, like, I should care a little bit more, but I kind of, well, I don't want distributors might be listening. What I would love to do would be to be able to funnel those revenues, like, to the people who took pay cuts to work on this, to the people who, you know, because what we put on screen is completely out of balance to what we actually had. So anyway, yes, I mean, I'd love to explore that, and I think it is. I think it gets down to pre-sales of DVDs. Right. You know, a lot of the we did a Cracked video. I don't know if you guys have seen it, where the topic was, if you do a Kickstarter, you know, there are some things you should be aware of, and there's responsibilities that and it's a ton of work, and you have an obligation to your pledgers, right, which we take very seriously. And of course, Cracked, those guys they put headlines, "Why Kickstarter sucks," or something like that, and then there we are talking about why Kickstarter. No, that was not our point. Our point was not that Kickstarter was a horrible thing. It's that it's something that you should be aware of if you're going into it, how much work. And some of those are like, you know, mailing out T-shirts and posters, and there's tons of all these prizes. I know a guy who did a cat toy, and he got funded, and he looked at me and said, "I just sent out the cat toy. You know, one prize, the cat toy." So that gets to what you're saying, which is like, it's the DVD sale or it's the ticket sale.
Yeah, I think it needs to be streamlined in that way.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of it being a ticket is great, or a ticket / DVD, whatever the future of viewing is, because then it's just like saying, hey, if I want to see your movie, I'll see it, I'll pay for it early. That means you get to see it, and there's nobody in the middle. I would just like to see one site just dedicated to that. Maybe that's what we're all going to create after the show.
Please do.
This will be our $1 million idea.
Please do. I'm copywriting it right now. Really.
I hope you guys do. Keep me out of it, just because I'm too exhausted. I don't have the brain power for that, but I'll come join with something.
We've had people on the show before who said that running the Kickstarter campaign was actually more work than creating the movie.
Job,
It is if you look at it, it's about in our case, it's about a 3-year process.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there are about 10,000 prizes to give out. And, you know, going from digital downloads all the way to you know, shipping a monster across, or we have a model boat that we shipped to Florida, you know, that kind of thing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I'm curious, because you guys worked with such interesting people at such different times as you went along, what you, in retrospect, like, kind of learned from each one, like whether it was from Cameron and Corman, if you took anything, you know, specific from working with Stan, kind of their philosophy or approach to working, and which parts, obviously more than a soundbite, stayed with you, but I'm always curious if there are specific things that made them unique from each other, even.
You know, I think, well, for me, it was looking at people like Cameron and David Fincher, right, that were so so sure of themselves. I've never had that kind of confidence, and I can't even define what that confidence is.
You're the Marcel Marceau of monster suits. Copyright in this moment.
Get that on a business card. If you just pass that out, they'd be like, "Oh, he's 6'2". That's okay. We'll take it."
I'm partly shocked that anybody in this room, other than Alec, and I know Marcel Marceau.
Did it get one every episode?
We had his apprentice on the show, Tom McLaughlin.
It must have been a great interview with a Marcel apprentice.
Who wore the gorilla suit?
Who wore the gorilla suit? He was the Jabberwocky. He worked with Marcel Marceau.
Yeah, he worked. He was one of the only Americans to ever study with him. He went, like when he was super young, he went out there. He was opening for the Doors in LA, and then he left when the band ended, and he went and worked with Marcel Marceau. He has this crazy story.
He's the creature in
We call him the Forrest Gump of horror.
Yeah, he really is.
Because if you look at history, it's like, oh yeah, I worked with that guy. Oh yeah, I was in the suit there. If you look in the background of that picture, that's my arm. And we're just like, wow.
He was the beast in the prophecy, and I think he tried to give...
He tried to give Frankenheimer direction from the suit.
He like had the thing on his really? And he like pulled him aside, like, don't you ever fucking do that.
He said, hey kid, I'll give you one pass. But
amazing stories.
It's nuts.
Stories.
People love big lives. But anyway, back to the Marcel Marceau.
Can we take a break and just break? Because I can't follow. You got to come back, and we'll be back in just a minute.
You know this is like reading a Wikipedia article and then clicking on a name and you're off. Frankenheimer, and then you're following it all.
That's how this industry works.
Wait,
it's all interconnected.
I do want to talk about me. It's my favorite subject. But I have a question. Was it not Kevin Peter Hall that was in the prophecy suit?
I think it was him and Tom. I think
at the same time
there was a change at some point.
At the same time.
Yeah.
There's both
two guys in one costume.
I don't know.
That's why it had so much life.
Well, one of them kept like passing out.
That's right. They did
say. They always had to have two on cue.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think.
Now, have you ever passed out in a suit before?
No.
Are you serious? You come close.
What the Hulk, right? We came very close to when we were shooting, and it's a scene that was removed from the movie. Scary movie.
You should ask me that question because I'm the one that's conscious. And he wakes up and doesn't know anything happened.
Now, are they ventilated and everything?
Nah, not really.
Are you serious?
Yeah. What?
What's the Hulk story?
The Hulk story. Scary Movie 3 had an ending with the Hulk. And again, it was kind of like, can I play the Hulk? and the producer said, okay. So, because I'm going to be wearing appliance makeup and so it's like, doesn't have to look at me, just, yeah, you've done this before. Sure, you can do it. So he built this Hulk suit and we wanted it super tight so it didn't look like a guy in a suit. But the Hulk was so bulky compared to my body. So we had probably foam rubber on, like 7 or 8 inches all around my torso and a full face. So there was no air getting to any part of my body. And we had shot, I think we were just doing a test and the suit was so damn tight. It's like what I realized in retrospect was as I was getting more and more tired, it was harder for me to inflate my chest and get a whole chest full of air. So I was sort of breathing very, very shallow without realizing it. And we were just to the point where we were starting to take it off. And I remember you had to catch a flight at the airport. And Yuri, who was our main guy, has been our main guy at ADI for like 22 years. He came over and he looked at me. He said, "What is happening?" And he said, "I got to get Alec back." I said, "No, he's on an airplane." He goes, and that was the last thing I remember saying. And then Yuri's kind of like, I'm on his shoulder and he's trying to drag me out. And when we got out to we cut the suit open. We had never done that before, but we figured we got to make some modifications anyway. So we cut the suit open and pulled me out.
The technical reason we discovered after that was that because a lot of this work was done very quickly because these comedy writers will come up with an idea. Let's do the Hulk. I hear that movie's coming out. Let's do it. Let's go. So you got to jump on it and you got to do this work very quickly. So one of our people who's very very competent. This is just used two-way stretch spandex, but used the stretch sort of lengthwise, but not widthwise. So it was like wearing canvas, tight canvas, and then you're stuck in this thing. So that's why you felt that kind of anaconda effect.
Well, I'm going to look up that alternate ending now.
Yeah.
It's there.
There's another moment in Alien 3 where Sigourney is like, looking for the alien or something. And I'm not sure how much of this ended up in the film. The alien is behind her on a shelf and he kind of comes slithering out. And Tom was lying in there, and I said, okay, like we got you positioned and stuff. I will, because it's hard to hear, I'll punch you in the foot because your foot is like hanging, and there's a hole here. I'll just punch you in the foot when the moment comes that you should. So it's a long scene, and she's sort of soliloquizing to herself, and the moment comes, and I punch him in the foot. Nothing happens. And I'm punching him in the foot, and nothing happens because he had rebreathed his own oxygen because the holes in the neck were not cut wide enough or something.
Yeah,
right?
because my face was down and on this little shelf.
So basically, he just very quietly went to sleep.
which is exactly what my grandfather did.
And then, unfortunately, first passengers in the van.
Yeah.
And then he woke up and leaped out. And it was actually pretty cool because it's like a totally unexpected Sigourney. It didn't happen when Sigourney expected. It didn't happen the way anybody expected.
Especially the cameraman who had turned off the camera.
Yeah.
I remember that too. I remember that there was one moment I remember because we did it a couple of times, and I remember at the beginning of the scene, I've got a lot of air, and I'm watching Sigourney coming into the room, and I remember thinking, "Wow, I'm doing a scene with Sigourney Weaver, and she's playing Ripley, and I'm the." Right? Like such an awful. Oh, it's like it reminds you of a kid when you'd stay up to watch a movie late at night, and you're watching it. And you're falling asleep. Anyway.
And that is why practical effects suck.
Well, my favorite moment, by the way, in all the behind-the-scenes footage of Alien 3 is when you tried to put the alien head on a little dog. That footage is so priceless of this little dog trying to run with adorable giant head or whatever.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about Leviathan.
We didn't know.
I don't even know.
Guys,
I don't even know
seriously.
what you got. Who was it? Both of you worked on Leviathan, or just?
Yeah.
Sure. Because Leviathan's really underrated. That's a movie we always talk about really loving. It's fun.
It's one of my favorite films.
You know, it's funny.
They've definitely questioned that.
I hated working on it for the most part. Yeah, but I watched it like within the last year, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
There's some really good stuff.
Especially the last line, right?
Yeah. The last line where Peter Weller is up to his neck in the ocean, and yet he can somehow get Purchase to leap out.
Jump shot.
Yeah, jump shot.
With perfect follow through.
Passing sea turtle.
That kind of the leechy tooth character that gets to Jesus, that thing is badass.
And it had a lot of thing in there too. Like, I feel like
absolutely.
I haven't seen Harbinger yet, but from the shorts, I feel like there's still a connection to that.
Oh yeah, I get even. You might watch Harbinger and go, "Oh, this is Leviathan."
Even more Leviathan. Well,
now I have to go home and watch it tonight.
Yeah,
there is a character in Harbinger named Bowman, and there was a Bowman in Leviathan. So
when you say you didn't enjoy that shoot so much, is it often because of the amount of time you have to work on something, or
that was partly because of the time we had built a lot of stuff in LA. Again, it wasn't just the monster. We took on these underwater dive suits that had to be built, and then we shipped everything over to Rome, which sounds wow. You got to spend time in Rome, which was good, right? But it also was very hard to find materials because we had to still complete some work over there, right? Quite a bit of work over there, putting the monster together. And it was just like, the studio, it was an old studio, and then the facilities weren't all that great. And as much as I loved George Cosmatos, it was hard, with him as a director because everything seemed so disjointed, and the monster was never built in a way that would allow you to show it going from this doorway to this hatchway, right? It was just like you see him at the doorway, you look away, you look back, he's at the hatch.
So that was more long takes.
And, that was really hard. You just can't show it because it didn't have all that moving appendages, and it was really, for me, it was the most restrictive suit because I was inside the base of it, and then I was operating the hand and the flipper, and there was this big plastic tube that kept my back hunched over that initially we built to give me some support. But as we found out, once I was encased in the thing, it kept me from ever standing, sitting straight up. So it was just killing my back. And I remember one point we were sitting in there, there's these great tentacles, really, and there's water coming down and it's sparking electricity and stuff. And I'm on this metal grid in the water, and I feel the shock come through my body, and I'm thinking, God, we're in Rome, where the health, the safety, the whole thing is not really. Yeah, it's not really. They're burning ashes. They're burning these torches in the these flares in the sound stage that are creating ash to look like it's underwater. So everybody's wearing these particulate masks. So it was, somewhat unhealthy conditions in general.
And it is one of those things where the workload was so much in such a short period of time, especially when, Stan took on the dive suits right at the end there. There was another company building them, and production lost faith in those guys. And we were just saying, well, why don't we just help them do their work as opposed to us taking on the work? But, Stan was a guy who was just like, it's us. We are the heroes. We can do this. So he would take it on. And we were exhausted by the time we got to Italy. We were just burnt out.
Was that the hardest physical job you've done from start to end in terms of whole production, or is there?
I don't know. That was tough. It was Mortal Kombat was a freaking bear. Because of the technical package, we built that thing in 3 months, and then it's 135 pounds on his back, and the stress level. Well, you had the physical thing, and I'm like, the sets have like holes in them, right? And Goro's got to walk around again. He's like got a little camera, a little monitor inside his, and I've got a headset talking to him, and it just. Add that to the politics of producers who were not very appreciative.
There were times when I was in Goro and I heard Alec on the outside, right, defending the working as producers, thinking, "I'm glad I'm inside this suit."
Right, and it's bad if the guy inside the suit is.
When we finally did the first show and tell at our shop, we had this little thing set up with a curtain. I'm behind the curtain. We're ready to show. The producers came over and ready to come out, and I hear one of the arms stop working, and I hear the technicians always like, "Hey," and you hear buttons click. This doesn't seem to be working, right? It's like, it's like that movie Tucker, right, where the car's falling apart before the curtain goes up, and it was, and what basically it came down to, and there was recently a story on Yahoo News about the 20th anniversary, and quite a few people talked about Goro. And Paul Anderson was the nicest, right? He said, "Oh, he was such a diva. He'd stay in his trailer." And the truth was that nobody there, not only did they not appreciate it, they didn't get it. I mean, Alec and I are not big into self-promotion, although you can hear us again on another podcast next week, 7 o'clock. But the truth is, they didn't get it. The one producer came to us, and basically what he described to us was a $2 million four-armed, walk-around costume, right? He said, "I want this technology. I want it to work this way. I'm going to give you half of the money. Here's how much money you can do." And we go, "Okay, we'll make it work somehow. We'll make it work," thinking that no matter what we delivered, but there was no appreciation for how quickly we built it, and no rehearsal. They literally, everything with Goro was shot in less than 2 weeks. And there was no time really spent on Goro getting some great shots built around what he could do and what he couldn't do.
It was a great learning experience, because we realized at that time, okay, we can't just be enthusiastic, wild-eyed kids when someone says, "Here, I want you to build, this thing." And then we go, "Wow, this is a blast. This is going to be awesome. We'll push the envelope. Wait a minute. How much time do we have? What are the resources? And then how are you going to shoot this?" Right. So now one of the questions we ask when people come to us is say, how many days are you shooting? Do you have budgeted a second unit? Are you prepared for the support crew that this thing is going to require? Because this is one of the attractions of digital, is that it's a smaller support crew. All your work, is not happening right then and there. You can shoot it and you can get the previs out and line it up and shoot it and move on, and you keep your schedule. It just costs you more down the line, right? And this is what we learned in Mortal Kombat, was that suddenly we're getting bills handed to us for extra candles that were lit because Tom had to take a 15-minute break because he was exhausted, or because the arms needed adjustment because it was a complex thing.
The costumer built a cape that weighed probably 35 pounds out of leather, and we decided it was impossible. So she had to build a lightweight cape, and she sent the invoice to us.
So that's the lack of support, right? And so that was a physically exhausting show. I don't know. Starship Troopers was physically exhausting. A lot of fun. You knew it was going to be something special. What else? We've had generally.
Was that the only Verhoeven one, or did you guys? I think you did Hollow Man too, right? Yeah,
Hollow Man,
which is a pretty big mixture between the two, right?
It is, but everything was human sized, so that was nice. It didn't take
Now, when you know that you're going to be in the monster suit for like a stretch on set, do you do any preparation? Like, do you train like a bodybuilder, or is it
Depends.
like whatever? I can eat cake for the next 5 days because I'm going to sweat it out anyway.
No, I can see the exact opposite. I'll lose weight. In fact, just a few weeks. I started doing this a few months ago because of some personal project I'm trying to do, but I don't fast, but I really cut back, and like it's all this, kind of homegrown stuff. I mix and match things that sound good to me. Like if one guy says, you can have donuts up till 3 p.m. Okay, well, I'm going to follow that part. But it's basically like no carbs after 3 p.m. and I cut way back. So I've lost 20 pounds since December. And I'm just trying to do, but that's really what I do because we have the value of having a gym right in our shop, right in the office next to Alec and I is a full gym. So I'm in there every day. And at home, every night I'm on a treadmill or a stair stepper or something, watching old movies. And so, it's been really nice with my kids are growing, they're out of the house. I don't feel like I'm robbing them of any time. So the long answer to yes, there is physical prep that I do. And there's also some mental prep. And
from my point of view, the bodybuilder thing is not desirable. Like muscle mass is not desirable. What Tom works on, and one of the things that he's physically got going for him, is that he's lean and strong, and that's the ideal thing.
Like a mime.
Yeah, like a mime.
Just to circle back.
Exactly. Built like a mime.
Have you guys? Oh, sorry. Just one last question, which I was really curious about, because our generation, people like Rob, are they now who are becoming directors seeking you guys out because of your work from the past? Because I imagine that's when you guys could, like Dean Kundi to us would be like, we would kill to work with Dean Kundi. And so, have any of those projects come to fruition yet?
Yeah, I mean, we get that kind of thing, where people walk through. It used to bug us a little bit, because we were like, what? We're the Wonderkind. Now who, what? I think David Fincher was the first director who was younger than us by like a year, right? And that was weird. And then now it's commonplace. And people come in and they go, I really want what you guys do. But unfortunately, very often they're overridden at a studio level where the studio just goes, okay, that's nice, kid, but they tend to be first timers or early. We just did a movie with Brian Bertino, who did The Strangers. And,
what was it called?
It's called There Are Monsters.
Oh, cool.
I won't tell you anything about it because, fine, but he was excited. He said that it's long been his dream to work with practical effects, and we were like, The Strangers was just so amazing that we were like, we're your guys. Whatever you need, you let us know. So we do get those, and they tend to be in the lower budgets, but we're having a lot more fun in the lower budgets. Right. In the big budget movies, we provide aspects of things. We don't get to necessarily control it the way we used to. But the lower budget movies we do, and there are people who understand that there's a value to the practical stuff and that it's a more cost effective way to go than digital.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I guess the last thing I wanted to ask, one of the advantages to having your YouTube page and sharing a lot of this stuff is getting to see some of the stuff that didn't make it to certain movies or whatever. And for me, as a comic book nerd, one of my favorite things that you guys ever did was the Green Goblin for the original Spider-Man. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like sometimes you see these videos and you're like, oh, somebody vetoed that, but with you, it's Tom performing as the Green Goblin, and you hear Sam Raimi's voice, and he's giving you direction and stuff. So you're like, oh, well, Sam's there. He saw how awesome this looked. I'm sure it was terrifying to little children that they wanted to market toys to. I would imagine that's what the deal was. But I wanted to ask about that anyway, because I'm sure you guys probably grew up on Marvel Comics too, and like to get the chance to do a live action Green Goblin. Yeah. And that reminded me years ago, Alex Ross had done this amazing drawing of Green Goblin that they made a bust out of that looked like the Goblin, but it had you could see behind the eyes that it was a mask, and that looked very similar. The Alex Ross painting looked very similar to the design you guys did.
When did he do that?
Alex who?
This is where we're back off all this copyright talk.
A long time ago. Yeah, before the movie. Yeah.
It's funny. I love Alex Ross's work, and I'm serious. I don't know. I prefer not to answer. But that character was a lot of fun. It was fun to do it because look, I'd rather do tests. When we do tests, I'd rather do tests on me if it's a suit or a makeup or something, because I'm going to give it my all, right? You put it on an actor and this kind of bothers them or that, and like the glue is kind of stiff or something, and I will power through that to really see what it can do. So on set, we were really thrilled with it. Alec was puppeteering the brow, so it was real expressive. And I remember Sam giving me directions, right? Like there was no dialogue that had been learned or something, but he would say, okay, so now look at me, now look that way, and now just count to 10. And I was trying to count to 10 in different ways of the mouth. And then he said, then the thing, the real wrench in the works, where he said, okay, now, what was he said, do the Gettysburg Address. And it was like suddenly I felt like I was in fourth grade again, and standing up going, I didn't learn it last night.
Flashback to Little Green Goblin standing at the front. Sam's only objection to it, he loved it, but his objection to it was that it looked too organic and alive, and he didn't want to get caught in this sort of Mission Impossible thing with magic flesh. So we said, well, it makes perfect sense that Norman Osborn would have made battlefield flesh, right? And why couldn't you mold it into this? And you could have a tank, a fluid with this goblin face twitching, and come around and see that it's hollow and it's got sensors on it and all that. And he said, sounds like a lot of shoe leather, a lot of explaining to do. And then, well, because he already had to explain how a 19-year-old kid could do raised metallic webbing, with his Aunt May or whatever. So I think it was just a bridge too far for him. So he said, I want the hard shell armor kind of thing, easier. There is no truth to the rumor, by the way, that Willem Dafoe wouldn't wear that. There was no truth at all. Willem Dafoe is a complete stud. We didn't know who was going to be cast for the movie when we did that. Even when we created the hard shell version, we didn't know who. We just did it off of a generic bust, but we did a larger scale and a smaller, tighter fitting one, not knowing. We're told it could be Willem Dafoe or Timothy Robbins. So that's like 6'5" and 5'7" or something. So we built two different sizes, and we showed them to Willem and said, this one, the big one, is going to be more comfortable. This one is going to be sleeker and more streamlined. He said, I don't even want to try the big one on. Boom, right for that. And his face would have red marks at the end of the day and all that. He was all into it. He totally would have worn a full makeup. Yeah. But anyway, that was the story there.
Wow. And to tie it back to Aliens, obviously you guys worked on all the Alien sequels, but you worked with Ridley Scott quite a bit on his I Am Legend, which never happened, which I think there's also some footage of that stuff. Yeah. So what was it like getting to work with Ridley after, I assume he saw your work on the Aliens movies and stuff.
Who knows? I don't remember talking to him about that.
We shot the tests in our display room, so they were all around. And he was very complimentary of Aliens, and I think he was very, very much like rolling his eyes at the concept of an Alien versus Predator, because it was talked about, but it was prior to that happening. So he was, and he had to evaluate our work. So there was no. He's got a great art direction eye, but he's a very kind of what do I want to say, like form follows function. He's very practical in his thinking, and he's not sort of like looking down at everyone on high. In fact, at that time, Saving Private Ryan had come out, and him and Hugh, I can't remember Hugh's last name, who was the DP who shot G.I. Jane, and they were both going, fucking hell. Did you see Steven Spielberg? Did you see that? We're all playing in the dirt with our dicks, and he goes off and does this. War movies will never be the same again. And I thought, that's cool, that Ridley Scott's impressed by something,
Yeah. Did you guys see Prometheus? I mean, what he did. I mean, obviously the alien was a minor player.
We got called in for that. And we had it's like every 5 years we have a 3-hour meeting with Sir Ridley. And and it's always very exciting. And we go in and go, what's up? And he he had a stack of artwork that he was flipping through as he was telling the story, and we're like, why is he spending so much time with us? But it was great, and it was great to see all the artwork, and I think he does that because I think he likes the opportunity to talk through things because things occur to him as he does that. But then at the end of the meeting, they said, and we're shooting in England, which usually is the death knell for us because there's lots of great people in England that can do that kind of stuff, and it's tax incentive and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it didn't go our way, but it was nice to, be eating a sandwich, listening to Ridley Scott,
get the early
watching
vision of it. Yeah. It's interesting.
Beautiful movie.
Yeah, we're like seem to be on the defender side of that because you do meet a lot of people who just didn't. I guess they wanted it to be to be something else.
And I still don't firmly understand everything.
No, I don't either. I just enjoyed it.
But I'm mesmerized.
There's a lot of plot holes, but
we'll be doing the makeup and creature effects for Prometheus too.
Oh, really?
Excellent.
Wow.
No, I'm just. We keep saying that. It's like,
okay.
And then when we're done with that, I'm going to direct Pumpkinhead.
We're going back to that.
I do want that to happen.
Unless we have come full circle.
I want Pumpkinhead. A good remake of that would be fan. Well, not a remake, just a new story, but with that.
Reimagining.
We don't need the dirt bikes. That's the only part. We don't redo the dirt bikes.
It's totally 80s.
But other than that, I feel like that's the only thing that really dates the kind of those kind of characters who come to. Other than that, it's just everything with Lance and the whole
witch and
the kid. It's absolutely heart-rendering story. Well, how was Stan as a director? Like, what did you guys think of him when he was like? Was that a difficult thing for him to balance, like running the show as well as?
I don't think so because
he was hands off on the creature stuff.
Yeah, and he had sort of been off and on. I think he was building up to that point. I mean, he designed the creatures for Monster Squad, but he wasn't really hands on any of that stuff. He assigned monsters to different people. Predator, that was the way Stan ran the shop. He would do the designs. He would make sure he had all of the input from the director and the producers and make sure all of that was, and the information was spread out, and then he would make sure we're on top of things. But I
gave you a lot of freedom.
I think it was really, really well suited.
And then on Pumpkinhead, I think he was enjoying stepping back from it even more to be the director and say, present artwork to me, and we'll say. But of course, he had a great eye, so we had that shorthand of communication. So our first round of drawings were literally like jack-o'-lantern headed guys, and he's like, "Let me explain something," to which we were going, "Oh, thank God!" We're being too literal, and he's given us room to play around. But that was a fun experience. And then on set, he was just having a blast. And that's one of my fondest on-set memories, was to be able to support your mentor who's making that next step up, who is just having fun, and really finally getting to do what he's wanted to do.
Yeah, I remember I revisited last October for last Halloween when the Blu-ray came out, and I came on the show and said, you know what? What an impressive directorial job he did on it, and it's a shame he didn't get to direct more after that, because if you watch it now after some odd years, you're like, he had a really good eye as a director too.
Yeah, he did.
So.
And he knew when to keep it in darkness. And that was the thing about it. That was the thing.
He's not afraid to hide it. Like all good creature guys, we say the same thing. Please don't show our creature. Don't show our creature in the first 10 minutes, and don't show it in all the light, and hide it. Yeah. Let people imagine what it is, and then when you deliver big in the third act.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you guys so much for coming down and answering all our crazy questions. And
we'll watch Harbinger Down and tell everyone about that too.
Harbinger Down is out now, correct?
Yes.
Fire City comes out October 6th.
October 6th, Fire City. Look for both of them. Cool. And again, check out their YouTube page. There's lots of amazing videos on there.
And next week we will be back. We're doing
a tribute to Wes
Craven tribute, and we're also going to be talking about Jumpcut as well.
Oh, we're going to be talking about that today too.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.